It's not about what's trending on Instagram. It's not about, getting the photo that makes you look good or a certain way. It's actually who are you and what works for you, because it's different.
It's might be a little more boring. They want this silver bullet that's going to get them from here to here, where it's not. It's the small daily stuff that you do that's going to get you there.
So we might hear words being spoken to us, communicated to us, but we are the ones who make those words mean something.
Negative self-talk, I can't, I won't, I'm not good enough, yet your conscious intentions are to go towards your goals. There's a misalignment between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind.
Welcome to Life by 8, your blueprint for living the most extraordinary life. I am Rebecca Grugan, your life architect on this journey to designing your ultimate life. If you are ready to level up using values levels, understanding yourself with the energetic blueprint, our 8 pillars to human wellness framework, this is for you. You are in the right place, so let's go. So, in the work that we do, we speak to a lot of people about, how they want to build their life, change their life, and they're not sure where to, they're stuck. So we have our foundation that we talk about in our framework, the Life by 8 framework, about nervous system and communication. And sometimes when people enter our community or start their personal development journey, they don't know what nervous system is, what communication even means. So today's episode is about going into that further together. So you are Life by 8's nervous system expert.
Yeah.
And so can you, shine a light on or go deeper into what is the nervous system?
Well, basically, your nervous system is the reason that you feel comfortable or uncomfortable in any situation, any room that you go into, any people that you're around. It will all be dictated to by the state of your nervous system. Now, whether you are in a state of heightened sort of anxiety or whether you're feeling quite flat, this is all your nervous system. And you are able to control your nervous system by using different tools and techniques to help you in situations where you are feeling a little bit stressed, anxious, or nervous. And being able to use these tools to help you do these things is going to improve life. And it's improved life for me because I can speak about it from a personal experience. Now, the nervous system will always protect you. Its job is always out to protect you, and there's a part of it that's every millisecond of every day is looking out for threats, and it's taking in every piece of information going, is this safe? Is this dangerous? Is it life-threatening? And what it does then with that information, it uses all your senses basically. It's not something that can be done through language. It's all done through felt sense. And this threat detector then sends those sounds, those images, those feelings, sends it back to a part of your body called the amygdala, and it's a threat response. And if it deems that a threat is there that needs to be dealt with, it'll sound the alarm. And if you think of like a smoke detector or a smoke detector where your body's flooded with chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, and you're put into this fight or flight state. So can you fight the threat, or can you flight? Can you run away? Or if you can't do either of those, you don't have the capacity, it could be a freeze state where you're going into a freeze.
So what does a freeze state mean, and how that could look for some people?
Let's say that you are going to give a big presentation coming up, and it's like you've got 1,000 people to present in front of, and you've never actually done this. And in the build up to this, the anticipation, the nerves, the anxiety, it gets so intense that you go from that sympathetic state where all the energy is mobilized in your body, and you've decided then that there's no way that I've committed to this, I can't get away from it, I can't actually fight it, and the preparation for this, you just can't bring yourself to do it. Each time you go to sit down and prepare something, it's just a nothing, a sort of a zonked out sort of feeling. And this is an example of how you could be in that free state.
And so what happens in our life for that to happen though? So how do you get out of it?
Any small movement towards the goal that you are trying to achieve, it's got to be small. So it's got to be small and it's got to be manageable. So if I was to go from not speaking to groups at all, and you look at the goal of wanting to be able to present in front of an annual conference of 1,000 people, I wouldn't go from not speaking to someone straight into this conference. I would get myself comfortable within my friendship circle. Am I comfortable voicing my opinion? Okay. When they suggest where we're going to go for dinner, am I comfortable voicing my opinion? Say, let's go to this place. Then that's a small step. It feels uncomfortable because I don't feel comfortable speaking my truth, but it's manageable enough for me to be able to do it within that circle. Then the next thing might be if you're at work and there's a meeting and you do have some input or insight into the meeting, do I then feel comfortable to, when they ask, is there any points around the table that need to be brought up? Do I then feel comfortable to bring up my point of view there? And then the next step might be in front of a bigger group. Yeah, I'm going to present to the team at the next team meeting, and I'll put together a 15-minute thing on whatever that is for you. And it's just these small, tolerable steps that help us get out of these states.
So that's almost the opposite of the all or nothing mentality that runs a lot of society, where it's like we just want to go all in. And we speak about going all in, be all in with LB8. But when we talk about a skill set or our nervous system, for instance, being able to handle whatever it is that we're doing, those small incremental steps allows us to increase our capacity.
Capacity is huge. And the person who can't feel comfortable speaking in front of their group of friends does not have the capacity to speak in front of 1,000 people yet. But that capacity is built brick by brick, day by day, step by step, by these small, tolerable experiences in that direction.
And so why does it feel like humans don't see things like that anymore? Why is it like trying to go from 0 to 100 straight away? What do you think? What's your opinion on what's been happening?
I think there's a lot of comparison in today's culture of, especially with the introduction of social media, we see the way some people are and we think, I really want to be that. And
we're comparing our step 1 to somebody else's step 20 or step 100.
Exactly. And you don't know who you're comparing yourself to. You just see this image, video, clip of someone, or it could be someone that you haven't seen for a while. You don't know what they've done to get to that place. And I can't reiterate enough the importance of small, tolerable steps for your nervous system.
Though it's not as magical as people, it's not what they want to hear. They want to know that they can have the results now.
It's might be a little more boring. They want this silver bullet that's going to get them from here to here, where it's not. It's the small daily stuff that you do that's going to get you there.
So what are some of the things that help people regulate their nervous system? We've spoken into what can happen or what is a dysregulated nervous system. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things or modalities that you use with your clients, yourself, to regulate or to stay regulated in your own nervous system?
I will get clients to make a list of regulating tools that is specific to them. Mm-hmm. Rather than have a generic list, it'll be different for everyone. Some might like to, go to the beach. Others may like to as we found on the weekend, was stroking their cat. Whether it's exercise, whether it's walking in nature, whether it's using different breathing techniques. There's so many different tools
Like
that
you
can
love
use.
ice baths.
For me, a ice bath or cold exposure is a tool that I use to really put the needle into the sympathetic stress side of my nervous system so that I can use my breath to bring it back down again.
Whereas I dislike ice baths immensely.
I've noticed that over the years.
However, I know that if my list of tools that I have for staying regulated isn't working, then an ice bath is what I will get into when they're not working to get myself regulated. And so it's not about what's trending on Instagram. It's not about, you know, getting the photo that makes you look good or a certain way. It's actually who are you and what works for you. Because it's different. Everybody's nervous system is different, and we all have different experiences, and our capacities are all different. And that's the thing. And I think you're right when you talk about social media and the impact of that comparison, because when we are looking at where others are, and if we've pedestaled them or we're looking up to them and we're thinking that they're better than us, we are missing all of the data and information between where we are now and what they may have gone through to get to where they are. And on top of that, it's actually being able to see whether the person that we're pedestaling or looking up to is embodied in the practice or the work or the life that they have. Because we can look a certain way on social media, or we can mask or project a certain way of being, but is that really what's going on for people?
Yeah, I agree. And you don't know what's behind the image, behind the video, unless you're, you know, close to that person. And even them, in some cases, there are things that you don't know about them. So that comparison game is a dangerous one.
Absolutely. And I think that that's where our foundation comes into play in regards to the nervous system is so important, but also your communication skills. Because if you only have one and not the other, you end up misaligned or out of integrity or congruency. And so instead of just having the one skill set, it's about having those both. Because the thing is that you can be super zen and regulated and calm, but if you don't have communication skills, being able to help people or to say what you mean and for people to understand and hear what you mean to say doesn't tend to happen. And if you only have communication skills, but your nervous system is up here, nobody's able to hear what you're saying, because your energy, your body language is in a stress response. It is in a space where, one, people may avoid it, don't want to be near it because of how it affects their own frequency, but also hearing what you mean to say, they're taking it a different way because it's not matching how you're showing up.
And they're so linked, because when you are in some of these elevated states in your nervous system, you know, heightened, anxious, nervous, you don't have access to certain parts of your brain. You don't have access to rational thought. And when you're in those states, then the language becomes very, very different, doesn't it? And our nervous system has a memory of basically your body storing every single experience that you've ever had. And if those experiences are experiences that have put you in that heightened state over and over and over and over again, this is going to be a default sort of state that you sit in.
So a personal example would be when we were at Costco the other week with the boys. So all four of us were there, and the pizza took forever. And
the biggest pizza in the world.
The biggest pizza in the world we couldn't finish in that one sitting. But an example was where what I was communicating wasn't matching the state of my nervous system. So we were in this space and we were doing this thing as a family, and I was looking forward to it. However, I had an imprint of your nervous system the last time we were at Costco, which was relatively heightened and separated. So I was already expecting you to be similar.
Yeah.
So I had already brought the old version of you into that experience. And on top of that, I hadn't communicated to you what else was happening, meaning the emails that I was getting, like that was happening in the other businesses, the pressure that I was feeling with different things that were changing. And I hadn't communicated those. And it was like, it's almost like we arrived in the Costco car park. I'd already brought that version of you with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had email, phone call, text message, all from different people for all different scenarios that just put my nervous system into a fight or flight, dysregulation.
Yeah.
Then the pizza took forever. And what was really interesting was when Liam, our 12-year-old, had said, don't you teach your clients to X, Y, Z? I can't remember the exact words, but I just looked at him and I said, you are correct. And then you said something about like, just chill. And I fucking lost it. And when I say I lost it, I mean, I answered in a way that was not integral to who I want to be on a day-to-day basis. And I think I said, you don't understand. You don't get what I'm going through. I went into victim. It's like, you don't understand the amount of pressure that I'm on, that 28 people mouths need to feed their families based off of the decision I've got to make on this change, on this and that. And as much as that's what I truly was feeling, I hadn't communicated that in a regulated way to you at any point.
And this is what I mean, that when we are dysregulated, we don't have access to some rational thought which can give us the language that is going to be helpful for the situation, to maybe let your partner know, or your colleagues, your friends, what you're actually going through. And you can appear snappy or angry, and it's not going to help the situation.
So in that scenario, obviously we did handle that differently to how we might have in the past before doing our own work on ourselves and together. In the past, that conflict might have gone up and up and up. So I might have responded that way. You might have made it mean something that about yourself or what you made it mean, whatever story you give it. Then your reaction would then put me in a story, and we would just go like this, this, and this. And in the past, we sort of would go to silence.
Yeah.
So we would disconnect via not communicating.
That was our default, wasn't it?
It was. That was the traditional avoidant, anxious attachment style. And we've been spending the last couple of years working towards secure.
That's right.
And the thing is that we let the words affect our nervous system without the insight or the self-awareness of the state of our nervous system before receiving those words.
I think now, the more that we've delved into this work, the more that we have learned, lived, experienced and felt, we now know that regular time spent on our own individual nervous systems give us the best relationship possible.
Absolutely. And old habits and old patterns are going to come. They're still going to be embedded in our
100%.
nervous system. The body keeps a score.
Yes.
And so it's having the compassion for the other person in the partnership to not make it mean something about themselves. Yeah. But it's also not writing it off completely. It's like I was talking about, responsibility in previous episodes about how it's not 50-50, it's 100 and 100.
Yeah.
And it's like bringing 100% of ourselves, but also knowing that it's our responsibility to take responsibility for our nervous systems individually. And it's our responsibility to hear what the other is saying or what they might mean, and to hold the space when they may not be able to show up the way we expect them to or that we want them to, but knowing that we have an underlying intent, which is to be closer, to deepen the connection, those sort of things, and have that compassion for when people are in Costco losing their shit.
And having that knowledge now and experience and having lived it and felt it, I think coming together with the purpose of connection is impossible unless you're in a regulated state.
But that's also knowing what each person needs. So the fact is that most of the time in a moment where conflict is possible, and in the past we might go silent for days, when something like that happens, also knowing that me needing time on my own or going somewhere on my own to get the breathing space before circling back is a need that I have. And for you potentially to not take that personally.
Yeah.
And so knowing what each other needs has been really, I guess, vital to a more connected relationship that is still so far from perfect, but is better and beautiful than it was 6 months ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Imagine
how good it's going to be in 15 years' time. That'd be amazing.
Absolutely. So
it's amazing now. I love it.
So we talk about we've spoken about the nervous system. And so I want to speak a bit more into communication. We've mentioned it a few times, but the other reason we have communication next to the nervous system is because the belief of your words create your reality. So in some of the work that we do at our events, we talk about the difference between thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and how we make something mean whatever we decide to make it mean. So we might hear words being spoken to us, communicated to us, but we are the ones who make those words mean something. And so the words that we speak, but also the words that we hear, create our reality because we give meaning to them.
And, no truer word was said than the words create your reality. And that's just not the spoken words that you say out loud, but it's the stuff that you say to yourself on a day-to-day basis as well. Because if your unconscious mind is constantly hearing negative self-talk, I can't, I won't, I'm not good enough, yet your conscious intentions are to, go towards your goals, there's a misalignment between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. And when that happens, it's the merry-go-round. You end up in a place where you've already been before and you're wondering why and how I've got here again. And it's language.
Well, this is what in NLP we would call programming. So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming, meaning our neurology, so our mind, linguistic, meaning language, and then the programming and input data that we receive.
Yeah.
So from birth, even from before birth, we receive data and we run it through certain filters. We distort, delete, and generalize. If we took in all the data that is accessible to us, we would lose our minds.
Yeah.
There's so much. So we're very, very limited to what we can actually handle in any moment. And so we use those filters to then react, respond, make sense of something. And the point that I make is what we hear or what we say, for instance, I'm not good enough, becomes a belief. And that becomes our voice, but it may have started back in our early younger years being somebody else's voice by the things that they said to us when we were growing up. An example could be that you play, football and you score 2 goals and you're like, did you see my goals? And the parent might go, but what about the 2 that you missed? We can make that statement mean it wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough. I'm not good enough. And that can then become our belief through everything in our life. The thing is that our beliefs don't have to come from major trauma. And so for many people, they're like, I didn't have anything major happen to me, I'm really grateful for the life that I have. But then they have these beliefs that keep playing out in patterns. And it can be something that seems little, like that when you were a kid, that impacts you forever.
Everyone has experienced trauma. Trauma is not the thing that happens, it's the imprint that it leaves on your nervous system, your body, your mind, and your language and your beliefs. So it could be something quite small or seemingly small, but you were 3 years old and you lost the favorite teddy that you always go to sleep with, and that teddy was all of a sudden gone. That might seem quite small and insignificant, but the imprint that has left on your nervous system is quite significant.
Absolutely. And what may surprise some people is that there are people who live lives without a voice in their head. And that gets to be great. But in reality, the voice that's in our head, the words and the self-talk, they were all somebody else's voice first. And so it's our responsibility to change the narrative, to rewrite the stories, to reframe those experiences, because you can. And that's the magic of the techniques we use in NLP or in the coaching that we do at Life by 8, because we look at language where the root cause was, where it started, and help clients to see different perspectives which can reframe that experience. And even though it might have happened 20, 30 years ago, we could fundamentally shift that narrative and that voice in your head almost instantly with certain processes that we utilize. And so that's the thing, is that your communication, that voice, the words you speak out loud, is really what you're manifesting.
And it's also linked, the language, nervous system. It's actually why we've put it at the center of our business, because building those two things together is what's going to create that life that you're after.
So an example in the past for us might be like when we would go silent. So when we would be in defense mode of ourselves, in survival and protection, our nervous system's dysregulated from an incident that occurred between us. You might be banging the dishes in the sink, going around with the vacuum, making sure you go that I see you and hear you and you're near me. What's happening for you? What was happening for you in those moments? And then I'll speak into what was happening for me, just to give people real life insights as to how this impacts their relationships.
Well, whatever that incident was, or those incidents were, because there was plenty over the years, that would have been me feeling unseen in certain parts and not able to express it with my language. So my nervous system had felt uncomfortable, but I didn't have the tools with the language to be able to talk about it without to be able to talk about it in a way that was going to be constructive. Because my old patterns when these things came up would be to use language like, you always, or every single time you, or you never actually. And those parts of, absolute language are always met with a wall.
The defense, because the intention behind using language like that, if you really want to go into the shadow, is to inflict a certain response, emotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the other person to feel because of how you feel. Hurt people.
Yeah.
And so for me, I would sit there and I'd be like, what the is happening? And I might have the communication skills, but my nervous system would meet your nervous system and just explode or go into avoidance attachment. So I would just be like detached from the whole thing. And then that would lead us into days of not speaking or overanalyzing or making a story that we're not actually speaking to the other person about. And over the years, we've been able to stop that amount of time, it be shorter and shorter. And I think one of the first things we used was making sure we had tea together often.
Yeah.
And so we went through a period of time where we had tea quite regularly to talk about what was happening for each other, or just to allow ourselves to connect in safer spaces.
So, a cup of tea with your partner, it's a regulating resource. It's something that brings you into that safe, connected, ventral vagal state, we call it, in the nervous system. Where
and look, it doesn't have to be tea.
You are able to connect. And it's just time where there's no distractions. It doesn't have to be long. But if it's regular, you become more regulated together.
Absolutely. And to be really, to be open about that can be really uncomfortable. When you have built the relationship on survival, defensive, silence, and in certain cycles and patterns, starting to connect in more safer or more vulnerable spaces can feel really unnatural and feel really uncomfortable. And speaking as a recovering avoidant, it is, because you're used to being able to. I was used to able to self-regulate, and the anxious attachment style requires that connection to be able to co-regulate. So the anxious attachment style, one of the responsibilities in doing the work was for the anxious to learn how to self-regulate, and for the avoidant attachment, i.e. myself, to actually start to allow myself the vulnerability to want and need somebody to connect with and to co-regulate with. So it can be something that for me has been confronting and difficult and uncomfortable, and pushing through those moments to get to the other side. And then also to realize you get to the other side and then there's a whole nother level of it. So the work never ends. But I think when we look at our foundation of where our nervous system's at for ourselves and being able to notice it in our partner, know what we need ourselves, but also what our partner needs. So knowing when your partner needs space to take the kids out to the park, or so that they can have silence, or so they can have that day, so whatever it is that they need, allowing yourself to be able to see that in yourself and for them, really important.
Yeah.
And then the ability to hear what's being said and take responsibility for what's actually being heard, and to separate emotion and meaning that may not be true to what you're hearing or what you're saying.
And all of this is made possible by being more regulated and doing the things that allow you to be regulated. Doing slow breathing practices, meditation if you like, going outside, nature. We're not meant to be inside all the time, staring at screens, playing with your animals, all of those things. If we are doing these more regularly, we'll find that what we call our window of tolerance to stress actually gets a lot wider, and the things that maybe used to put us into a more heightened, anxious, fight or flight state, you can now tolerate them, or you can now process and deal with them in a more appropriate manner, rather than losing your mind, saying something you shouldn't, going into these default modes of either silence, sometimes some people could be violence, all of those things. So maintaining that regular regulation through these, whatever it is for you, it'll be different for everyone, is super, super important.
And the thing that people might not want to hear is it's not your partner's fault.
No.
It's not, if my partner just did X, Y, Z, then we would have this. You have a responsibility to take in that partnership as to how you showing up truly, really, and really facing yourself, which is one of the hardest things you may ever do in your life. But as I said earlier, it's not about 50-50. It's not about give and take. It's about 100 and 100. And it's coming together to build something incredible together. And that means that both parties have to come to the table.
Yeah.
And sometimes if your partner's not willing to do that, then hard decisions need to be made.
And this has all been done at sort of different paces between us over the years. I might sort of grow a certain amount, and then you grow, and then I grow, and then you might grow a little bit more, and I'm sort of still waiting. And it all happens at different speeds and paces. But I think with our relationship, there has been movement from both sides in the same direction, which has been important for us.
Absolutely. And the thing is that it's treating the relationship as a business, I would say, in regards to having the conversations about what is it that support looks like for you? What do you need from me right now? Is this still the relationship you want to be in? Those types of questions help bring up the unspoken feelings, the shadows that might be playing around.
And you think of that's a fairly important question. Is this the relationship that you'd like to be in? And coming from someone who would have had a default anxious attachment style, that would have been a very scary question to ask, because your nervous system would be, oh my God, there's a threat here. That what if the answer is no? What if the answer is no? So, the work that I've done on myself has given me the confidence, the ability to have that conversation. And I think that work on my own nervous system, my own language skills, has what's led to the answer being yes.
Absolutely. And so that's the foundation: nervous system, communication. When you have those together, when you have them in yourself, then, only then can you build and embody that extraordinary life that people are saying they want. But you've got to do the hard things first.
Yeah.
And it's all worth it.
It's absolutely worth it.
Thank you so much for being here for today's conversation. If anything resonated with you, let us know in the comments or in our DMs. If you've got any questions about nervous system, communication skills, or anything we've spoken about today, let us know.
Thanks so much for being here and living life by 8.